BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Sport was always something that I really was passionate about and wanted to get involved in, and I just never could. Hello, I'm Sylvie. I'm 22 years old from Wolverhampton, and in this episode we're going to be talking about arthritis. So one of the things that I really was interested in was finding out how many pro athletes suffered with the same kind of things that I do with arthritis, and someone I could maybe relate to. And one of the most famous ones that I came across was Caroline Wozniacki, the professional tennis player. She was world number one at one point, and she was like kind of one of the top women in the field. And to find out that she recently got diagnosed with arthritis was quite a bit of a shock, but it was also really kind of fascinating to me because I realised she's playing pro tennis. She's still carried on competing even after she got diagnosed with the condition. And I thought, if she can do that, then why can't I be playing sport? So I've had arthritis since I was about 11 years old, and it was something that was really difficult to diagnose. My foot kept getting hot and red and swollen, and then I started to kind of get it in my hands, like in my thumb as well. So my mum took me to see a private podiatrist who suggested for the first time that it might be arthritis. And I think that's the first time I ever heard that, and it was really scary. I was like 11 or 12, and I just didn't know what to do with myself. Thought, well, surely not. Old people get arthritis. It's not young people. I'm too young for it. It was very scary. It could have been like multiple conditions, but it was narrowed down to juvenile idiopathic arthritis, which basically it means that they don't know where it started. It's not in the family. I'm kind of the first one to get it. It came out of nowhere, and that was it really. From then on, my life was kind of never the same. Sport's something that I've always watched in awe of. It makes you feel really good emotions, and you can just see how hard these people work to get to where they want to be. And I think it was always something that I was really interested in. But when I was younger, I never really got the chance to go to any clubs or anything. I always loved the look of gymnastics and people flipping and doing all these incredible things with their bodies that you shouldn't really be able to do. It always fascinated me, and I think when I got to high school I wanted to explore these things and try them out. And you start to do things like we had lessons in trampolining and gymnastics, and I started to get really interested in all this stuff. And then all of a sudden got arthritis, and everything just became so much more difficult. I couldn't really play any of it. I couldn't really get involved. My ankle would swell up so bad, and it would be so painful to walk on. I'd end up walking on the outside of my foot. So playing sport was just very difficult. So one of the people who helped me most when I was first diagnosed with the condition was my childhood rheumatologist, Dr. Davis. She was so compassionate, and she was such a good doctor because she was always there, not just for the physical side of things, but emotionally she really helped me when I was having bad days. And I went to see her quite regularly, and she was always very understanding, and it felt like even though maybe no one else might understand me, at least someone does.
People will sometimes look at me saying, I didn't know children had arthritis. And even after all the work that we feel like we've been doing over the last few years, but actually 1 in 1,000 children will at a given point have arthritis.
Have you actually had any patients that have been really sporty?
I would say a lot of my patients are very sporty, and that certainly wasn't the case 10 years ago. And I'd always kind of be quite careful if you asked people what sports they did, because I think a lot of people felt quite left out, felt there's something that they couldn't be included in. But nowadays I assume that they do something, because most young people do.
It's brilliant now because sport's actually something that can kind of help the arthritis, rather than it being seen as something that you should not do because you've got it. So I know a lot of people do water sports and physiotherapy and things like that.
Absolutely, and physiotherapy physiotherapy is one of the cornerstones of treatment. So the medical treatment, we tend to focus on the drugs, but we always say to patients that is half of the treatment, and the other half is physiotherapy and, functional management. So we've been able to change the advice we give, because, formerly when we had people with very aggressive, uncontrolled disease, they weren't in a position where they could go out and do sport. But now our disease control is so much better, then we should be able to establish control of the disease so that you can go out and do exercise. And the benefits are not just the individual joints, for general health, for mental health, for stamina, for bone health. There are so many benefits of sport for everybody, but particularly people with arthritis.
When I found out that the likes of Caroline Wozniacki and, she has arthritis, she was diagnosed while she was at the best point in her playing career, and she still continued to play and compete at a high level, and it was really inspirational and kind of eye-opening in a way to see that she wasn't letting it hold her back. And there was actually, I came across a young girl's story called Summer Artman, who she plays for England netball and Team Bath, and she's had arthritis since she was 7 years old, so a little bit younger than me. And when I was reading her story, it was just so relatable to me, and I thought, wow, I really want to speak to her and, find out more about how she copes with it, because, she's playing for England netball. That's amazing. So, I actually went to meet her, and we had a really interesting conversation about her journey with the condition and how she manages it mentally and physically.
So I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid idiopathic arthritis when I was 7. They don't know where it came from, so it wasn't in my family history. No one in my family has it. I've kind of started it off. And then rheumatoid, which is different to osteoarthritis. Rheumatoid is more related to my immune system. So it's an autoimmune system disease where my immune system tends to attack itself and affects the joint lining of my joint and causes inflammation and swelling and things like that. Definitely when I was younger, it would mean that I'd wake up and my knees would be swollen. I actually had polyarticular, which means that it was all over my body, so it was in quite a few of my joints. So my joints might be swollen, they could be stiff for days on end, and then weirdly, the next day it could be perfectly fine. And I think that's quite a misconception about arthritis, or something that people struggle to understand, is how it can fluctuate day to day, week to week. When I first got diagnosed, I would struggle to do day-to-day things like getting dressed or walking down the stairs. But I can't say that I ever adopted arthritis as something that was part of my identity. So I am a Christian. I love sport. I played a lot of sport when I was younger. I valued my education. These were things that were part of me and that were quite stable in who I was. Arthritis wasn't, and I never really took it on, so it was never going to stop me from doing anything that I wanted to do. It was just something that I just had to deal with sometimes. And so when I did have a flare and when my knees were swollen, I'd take that for what it was on that day, and I obviously wouldn't be able to do the things that I loved. But when my knees were fine and, when the symptoms were at bay, I'd absolutely go and do whatever I wanted to do. So I never really, I've never seen it as part of who I am. It's just something that I have to deal with sometimes. Before I was diagnosed, I already knew that I wanted to be a great netball player and I wanted to play for England. And so I think I kind of saw it as more of an obstacle to overcome rather than something that would absolutely limit my playing career.
You've always said that you were sporty, but how specifically did you get into netball and how's it helped you with your condition?
I've always been tall, and so when the netball season came around in school, I think I was in year 3, so I was 7 years old. And the teachers were just like, Summer, you're going on the netball court. And I was like, okay, what's this sport? And I tried it and I absolutely loved it. And I used to play, people aren't going to believe this, but I did actually play centre at one point. I played goal shooter, I played goal attack, anything. As long as I was on the netball court, I was happy.
So how does it actually feel now to be playing for England and to be on senior call-up?
My first ever experience of a senior tour, and I was side by side with the girls and we were singing the anthem, and I just got so emotional because I thought, irrespective of everything that you've had to overcome, here you are representing your country. And I think often when you go through challenges, sport or not in sport, it can actually bring forth a lot of perseverance and pride. And actually what has come out of me having arthritis is this amazing sense of being able to achieve whatever I wanted to achieve. And I don't think I've got there yet. I'm definitely not where I want to be in my netball career yet, but I'm going in the right direction. And it's such an encouragement, I think, to myself. But I also hope that it could inspire other people with arthritis, that they can also believe that they can do whatever they want to do, irrespective of having the condition. And so, yeah, I definitely take pride in the fact that despite everything, here I am doing what I love still.
Are your teammates all supportive when you go on tour? And how do they help you if you're struggling or having a flare-up or a bad day?
A lot of the girls I've actually grown up with, so they've seen the transition of days when my knees are swollen and I'm a bit down to days when I'm actually flying high and seemingly nothing is wrong. So yeah, they definitely understand the condition. And for those who might not understand the condition, the dialogue is definitely there. And I think that's really important, actually, just being able to have an open dialogue for people who might not understand why yesterday you were perfectly fine and today you're struggling. It's just about having that open dialogue, asking the question and being open to the answer. So people might say, so we have this thing we have to use ice baths in netball, or athletes generally have to use ice baths for recovery purposes. And for me, when I get into an ice bath, the cold does something to my joints that they just absolutely hate. And it will mean that a few hours afterwards, I'm in a lot of pain. And so if I don't get into an ice bath, sometimes the reaction is, oh, I wish I had arthritis, then I wouldn't have to go in the ice bath. And it's kind of funny, but I think to myself, if I could trade everything that I go through that you don't see day to day, just so I can go in an ice bath, I probably would take it, but I can't do that.
One of the things I really took from Summer was her attitude, and her mental approach to arthritis is incredible. Something that really, really stuck with me was her kind of not letting it be a part of you. So while it's an obstacle you have to overcome, not letting it be a part of your personality, which I found really inspiring. And just talking to her really inspired me. So what I decided to do was I've booked a tennis session. I've always loved the idea of playing tennis, so I'm going to go for it. Try out a first session, see how it goes. I'm a little bit nervous. I've had a bit of flare-up lately, so I'm kind of worried about how it might affect me. But we're just going to give it a go, and we're going to see if I enjoy it or not. Oh! Ah! What I found during this session was that tennis is actually a lot harder than it looks on the telly. I mean, those professionals make it look so easy. I expected to go in there. I kind of had my hair done quite nicely. I didn't tie it up or anything. And I came out by the end of it drenched in sweat, which is probably a good thing. It shows that I worked out quite hard. But yeah, it was a lot harder than I expected. But one thing that surprised me was, although I was having a bit of a flare-up, it didn't actually feel that bad once I got moving. So at first I was a little bit stiff and a little bit nervous, and then as soon as I started moving and getting into the session and maybe warming up my joints a little bit, it started to feel okay, and it didn't actually hurt me or physically strain me anywhere near as much as I expected to. I was hurting a little bit at the end, but I'm quite happy to say that while I was doing the session, it felt completely fine. Obviously the tennis was really hard and I wasn't very good at it, but I found it a lot of fun and I would totally do it again yeah, I really enjoyed myself. Cracking backhand. I think what I've learned from this whole podcast experience is that it really does help to have a more positive mindset. Now, of course, that's not always going to be possible. There are going to be days when everyone feels down and dejected, but when I met with Summer, I just couldn't help but feel like she was talking to me. Like, specifically, it felt so relatable the way she was telling me about how she copes with things, and her outlook on arthritis was amazing. And to me, like, it inspired me to want to have a more positive outlook myself. And actually, it's not all doom and gloom because you've got arthritis. It's just something like a little hurdle that you have to overcome, and you shouldn't let it stop you from doing anything that you want to do. Moving forward, I'd like to think that we can all adopt a more positive outlook on arthritis. I think it's important that, especially with so many young children affected by it now, and even babies, I think it's hard sometimes to see the positives, but I want it to be when they grow up, they don't see it as a hurdle. I want them to grow up and see people like Summer, like Caroline Wozniacki, doing these amazing things and having this amazing outlook on the condition, and I want them to feel inspired and not like everything it's the end and be all and end all of everything, because when I was younger, that's kind of how I felt, and I want to be able to, even if it's just a small change, I want to be able to help other people have that more positive outlook and think, actually, I don't need to be limited by this condition. I can actually go on and do what I want to do. I'm not going to let arthritis stop me from pursuing any sport now. I really enjoyed my tennis session, and I think it's something that I'm going to look at keeping up with. Maybe not every week, but I enjoyed it so much, and I think it's something that is fun to do with friends, and I'll definitely be playing more and trying to get more active, not just in tennis, but in other ways too, like going to the gym and keeping up and regularly exercising, because that's something that I fell behind with. And after doing this episode, I feel like I've come on a bit of a journey, and I feel a lot more positive about things now, so I'm not going to let my arthritis get in the way of me exercising and keeping healthy and enjoying myself. And I hope you don't either, so I hope you've enjoyed listening to my podcast and coming on this journey with us, and I hope if you're listening and you've got arthritis that we've been able to help you in some way too.
If you've got an idea that you'd like to turn into an episode of this podcast, get in touch at originalpilotmaterial.thesocial@bbc.co.uk, and for more episodes, subscribe directly on the BBC Sounds app or wherever you listen to podcasts. Original Pilot Material is made by Paul Carlin, Ali McRae, Ross Semple, Kirsty Drain, Paul McFadgen and Anthony Brown. This episode was hosted by Sylvie Devaney.